My name is Loretta Green, and I am 67 years old. People in my church call me Miss Loretta. Neighbors just wave and say, Mama Green. But to my son, Andre, I'm simply Mom. I've been a widow for 3 years, ever since my husband James passed away and left me with the little house in Houston, Texas, and more memories than I sometimes know what to do with. Folks think of me as a quiet, retired woman who spends her mornings on the porch with sweet tea, but they don't know the whole story. They don't know about the peach orchard James and I built together outside the city, or the secret income it still brings me every single month. I never thought I'd have to reveal any of that. But one Christmas morning, everything changed. We were gathered in Andre and Vanessa's beautiful suburban home, a place full of twinkling lights, polished wood floors, and the smell of spiced ham. The children, Kayla and Jordan, were tearing into wrapping paper, shrieking with laughter. For a moment, it felt like family, like the kind of holiday I used to dream about. And then I asked a simple question, one that should not have been hard. Andre, I said softly, Mama needs a little help with her new medication. Just $200 to cover the monthly prescription. Sevens. The room froze. Vanessa's manicured fingers paused mid-scroll on her phone. She lifted her head and gave me a smile sharp enough to draw blood. $200. Really, Loretta? You contribute nothing but costs to this family. Sevens. And Andre, my own flesh and blood, laughed. That laugh split me open. It told me everything about the man my son had become, and everything about the woman who now held his strings. I sat there for one long breath, then smiled as sweetly as I could, and spoke the 7 words that would turn the holiday upside down. Sevens. Then, the $8,000 mortgage ends now. Sevens. The silence that followed my words was thick enough to choke on. For a moment, even the Christmas carols playing softly from the Bluetooth speaker seemed to die mid-note. Andre nearly dropped his coffee mug, eyes bulging like I'd just confessed to a crime. Vanessa's smile faltered, her perfect red lipstick twitching at the corners, as though she wasn't sure whether to scream or pretend she'd misheard me. Mortgage, she whispered, her voice slicing through the living room air. Andre, you told me this house was paid off. Sevens. Andre's Adam's apple bobbed up and down, but no words came out. He looked like a man caught in headlights, frozen and foolish. The children, sensing the tension, grew quiet. Kayla clutched the wrapping paper in her hands, and Jordan's toy car rolled off the table, forgotten. I leaned back in my chair, calm as Sunday service, though my heart was thundering against my ribs. $8,000, every single month, I repeated slowly, so there would be no confusion. From my pocket. From now on, that stops. Sevens. Vanessa turned fully toward her husband, eyes wide with a fury that was almost theatrical. You said you inherited money from your father. You said that's how you could afford this place. You told me your mama was long gone, Andre, that she was just a stepmother at best. Sevens. Her words hit me like a slap, but not for the reasons she thought. I let out a soft laugh, the kind that bubbles up when the truth finally forces its way through a web of lies. My son had told his wife I wasn't his mother, that I was a stand-in, a substitute, a woman unworthy of the truth. And in that moment, I realized Christmas morning was no longer about family. It was about exposure, about peeling back the lies Andre had built his life on, and watching them unravel under the glow of twinkling holiday lights. I stared at my son, the boy I had carried in my own body, the boy I nursed through fevers and scraped knees, and I could hardly recognize the man sitting across from me. To hear Vanessa dismiss me as some stepmother, and to know Andre had let that lie live under his roof, it cut deeper than any insult she could throw. When James died, Andre was barely out of high school. I worked double shifts at the diner just to keep the lights on, then cleaned offices at night, so my son could go to college without drowning in debt. I still remember the ache in my back, the grease stains on my apron, the calluses on my hands. All of it was worth it, I told myself, because I was building a future for him. My boy. My only child. Now here he was, dressed in fine clothes, living in a house far bigger than anything I ever dreamed of owning, pretending I wasn't even his mother. My heart clenched with both rage and grief. How quickly children forget the sacrifices that paved their way. But I wasn't about to let shame silence me. Not this time. I squared my shoulders, the same way I had when life tried to knock me down over and over. Andre, I said quietly, almost tenderly, don't you dare forget who brought you into this world. Don't you dare erase me to cover your lies. Sevens. The room grew colder than a Texas blue norther. Vanessa crossed her arms, waiting for him to answer. The children shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting between us. And for the first time, I saw fear flicker in Andre's gaze. Not fear of me, but fear of the truth finally pressing against the walls of the life he had built on deceit. I sat up straighter in that leather chair, the Christmas lights twinkling behind me, like a mockery of the cheer we were supposed to be sharing. For years, I had bitten my tongue, told myself it wasn't worth stirring up conflict, that family harmony mattered more than pride. But pride, I realized, was all I had left, and it had been trampled under Andre's lies and Vanessa's venom. So I let the words roll off my tongue, smooth and deliberate. From this day forward, I said, my eyes locked on my son, not one more dime of my money will go into this house. The $8,000 a month. Done. The car notes. Finished. The utilities. Find a way to pay them yourselves. Sevens. Andre's face drained of color. He looked like a man who'd been sucker-punched, struggling for air. Vanessa's jaw tightened, but her eyes glimmered with something darker. Panic. For a woman who prided herself on control, the idea of losing her perfect life terrified her more than she could hide. You can't just stop, Andre stammered. The payment's due in a week. If we default. Sevens. Then you default, I interrupted sharply. I've carried this family on my back long enough, and I won't do it another day. You're grown, Andre. You're a husband, a father. It's time you acted like one. Sevens. The children sat frozen, their toys forgotten, sensing something permanent had cracked in their world. I didn't look at them, not yet. My focus was on the two adults across from me, the ones who had mistaken my silence for weakness. Christmas morning was supposed to be about love, about giving. But that year, in that house, it became the moment I stopped giving and started taking my power back. Vanessa was the first to recover her voice, though it came out more like a hiss than speech. She slammed her phone down on the coffee table so hard that the kids jumped. Mortgage, she repeated, her manicured nails tapping against the glass. Andre, you swore to me this house was ours, free and clear. You said we owned it outright. Sevens. Her voice ricocheted off the vaulted ceiling, louder than the holiday music still trying to play in the background. The golden glow of the Christmas tree suddenly felt harsh, like a spotlight on a stage where every lie was being dragged into the open. Andre swallowed hard, his eyes darting anywhere but at me or his wife. "Baby, I didn't want to worry you," he stammered. "It's just temporary. Mama was helping out until I got that promotion." Sevens. Helping out? Vanessa cut him off, her tone dripping with rage. $8,000 a month is not helping out. Andre, that's a lifeline. That's our roof, our cars, our whole damn lifestyle. And you let me believe it was you providing it. Sevens. I said nothing. I just sat back, hands folded in my lap, watching the walls of their perfect suburban dream begin to crack. For years, I had been the silent partner in their little charade, the invisible hand keeping the lights on, the payments current, the image intact. Now, with one sentence, I had ripped away the curtain. Vanessa's eyes snapped to me, burning with a mix of fury and desperation. "How long, Loretta? How long have you been paying for our life without telling me?" Sevens. I met her gaze calmly. 2 years. Every month, without fail. Sevens. Her lips parted, but no words came. She looked at Andre as though seeing him for the first time, as though realizing the foundation of their marriage wasn't built on love or trust, but on lies and my checkbook. And in that moment, I knew the truth. Vanessa wasn't just angry at me. She was terrified. Terrified that the money she'd been basking in, the life she'd been flaunting, was never hers to begin with, and that it could vanish overnight. I could feel their eyes burning holes into me, like they were demanding answers I wasn't sure I owed them. But sometimes silence is its own weapon, and I let it stretch just long enough before I spoke again. "You want to know how?" I said softly, folding my hands in my lap. "You want to know where the money comes from?" Sevens. Andre finally looked at me, his face pale, as if bracing for a storm he knew was coming. Vanessa leaned forward, hungry for the truth, or maybe just for numbers she could tally in her head. "It's from the orchard," I said. "Your father's peach orchard, out near San Marcos. 30 acres of land, trees that he and I planted with our own hands. Every summer those peaches ripen under the Texas sun, sweet and golden. And every month, the tenants who run it send me a check. $10,000. Steady as clockwork." Sevens. The room fell so quiet, I could hear the faint crackle of the fireplace. Andre blinked like he'd been slapped. Vanessa's jaw dropped, her painted lips parting in disbelief. You never told us," she whispered. I shook my head. "It wasn't yours to know. That land was your father's pride, and when he passed, it became mine to steward. I kept it quiet, because I wanted to see who my son would become without leaning on it. I wanted to know if he could stand on his own 2 feet. Sevens. Andre shifted uncomfortably, shame flickering across his features, but Vanessa's mind was already spinning. I could see it. Her eyes glimmered like coins, calculating just how much that orchard could be worth, how many years of comfort those peaches could buy. I leaned forward, my voice low but firm. "Don't get it twisted, Vanessa. That money isn't your cushion. It isn't Andre's trophy. It's my safety, my independence, and it's the one thing I won't let either of you gamble away. Sevens. For the first time since I'd walked into that house, I felt a flicker of control return to me. Like the orchard itself, rooted deep, standing strong no matter how fierce the storm. Andre rubbed the back of his neck, the way he used to when he was caught lying as a boy. Only this time, there was no easy excuse he could reach for. Vanessa's eyes were drilling into him, demanding answers he could no longer dodge. "Tell her, Andre," I said quietly, though my voice carried more weight than a shout. "Tell her how this house runs. Tell her who really pays the bills." Sevens. He hesitated, his lips trembling, then the words tumbled out, broken and small. "It's Mom," he admitted. "It's been Mom the whole time." Sevens. Vanessa recoiled like he'd struck her. "What do you mean it's been your mother? Andre, you told me you were making enough with your promotion, that the cars, the vacations, the private school for the kids, it was all from your salary." Sevens. Andre's shoulders sagged, his eyes locked on the floor. "I didn't want you to know the truth," he muttered. "I wanted you to believe I could give you the life you deserved, that I was the man I promised to be." Sevens. I sat still, hands folded in my lap, though my chest ached at his words. He didn't want to admit he wasn't enough. Not to himself, not to his wife, and certainly not to the world. So instead of building a life on hard work, he built it on my checkbook and his lies. Vanessa's face hardened, her voice sharp as glass. "So every steak dinner, every shopping trip, every Christmas gift under that tree, was really from your mother?" Sevens. Andre flinched but nodded. I felt a heavy sorrow settle over me. This wasn't just about money. It was about a son who had traded his integrity for appearances, who had let pride and vanity twist him into someone I barely recognized. I leaned forward, meeting his downcast eyes. "Andre, you don't build manhood on lies. And you sure don't build a marriage on somebody else's pocketbook. You built a castle on sand, and today, the tide just came in." Sevens. Vanessa's silence didn't last long. She shot up from the sofa, her heels clicking against the hardwood as she pointed a trembling finger at her husband. "Wait just a damn minute," she snapped. "Andre, you told me your mother died when you were a teenager. You said the woman sitting here was just some stepmother who raised you. You swore to me she wasn't even blood." Sevens. Her words sliced the room in half. Andre's head jerked up, his face flushed crimson. "Vanessa, Sevens. But I didn't give him the chance. A bitter laugh escaped me, the kind that comes when you've been carrying the truth alone too long. "Stepmother," I repeated, savoring the word like something rotten on my tongue. "Baby, I carried that boy for 9 months. I pushed for 20 hours to bring him into this world. I've got the scars, the stretch marks, and the memories burned into my bones. I am his mother, his only mother." Sevens. Vanessa's eyes widened, and for a moment, the fury on her face gave way to raw betrayal. She turned back to Andre, voice trembling but sharp as a blade. "So you've been lying to me for 8 years. You let me believe she was just some stepmother, someone disposable, when all along she's the woman who gave you life." Sevens. Andre's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. He looked like a child caught with both hands in the cookie jar, except this lie was too big, too ugly to brush aside.
I leaned forward, my voice steady, calm, but laced with steel. Andre, I raised you alone when your daddy passed.
I worked double shifts so you could have shoes on your feet and books in your bag. And this is how you honor me, by burying me alive in your lies. Sevens. The room went silent again, but it wasn't the silence of shock this time. It was the silence of something breaking. Vanessa's trust, my patience, and maybe, just maybe, the very foundation of Andre's marriage. 2 days after that Christmas morning blowout, I came home from church to find a thick manila envelope sitting on my front porch. No stamp, no return address, just my name scrawled across the front in neat block letters. Now, I've lived long enough to know that envelopes left in the dark don't usually bring good news. My hands trembled as I carried it inside, set it on the kitchen table, and peeled it open. What slid out made my blood run cold. Credit card statements. Page after page of them, balances stacked sky high. $42,000 on one, $25,000 on another. All of them in Andre's name, but a few had my name, too. Except the signatures weren't mine. The ink was a sloppy imitation of my handwriting, the kind a child might fake on a field trip permission slip. There were loan documents as well, fat numbers circled in red ink. My house used as collateral. My orchard listed as assets to secure repayment. And again, signatures that looked like mine, but weren't. I sat there staring, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the room. My own son had dragged me into debt I never agreed to, never even knew existed. And at the very bottom of the pile was the worst of it. A payment schedule for a second mortgage on Andre's house. Taken out 6 months ago. My name forged neatly on the line, marked co-signer. Sevens. For years, I had feared growing old meant becoming invisible. But this was worse. This meant I wasn't invisible at all. I was useful. A name, a signature, a bank account. Something to exploit until there was nothing left. I folded the papers back together, my hands shaking. Whoever had left that envelope wanted me to see the truth. And whether it was a warning or a threat, I couldn't tell. All I knew was this. The lies I thought I had uncovered on Christmas morning were only the beginning. Andre and Vanessa weren't just living off me. They were building their entire future on my back. And they hadn't hesitated to carve my name into debts I'd never touched. And that was the first time I felt something new. Not just anger, not just sorrow. For the first time in my life, I felt fear of my own child. I thought the forged loan papers were the worst of it. I thought nothing could top the sick feeling of seeing my name dragged into debts I never touched. But at the bottom of that stack, folded neatly in its own plastic sleeve, was the document that nearly stopped my heart. A life insurance policy. On me. $800,000. That number stared back at me in bold black type, like a death sentence waiting to be signed. And there, under beneficiary, was one name only. Andre Green. My own son. I pressed a hand to my chest, the room spinning. For years, I had believed the biggest threat to my safety was time itself. Aging bones, failing health, the slow erosion of independence. Never, not once, did I imagine that my own child might see me as more valuable gone than alive. I sank into the kitchen chair, clutching that paper like it might bite me. And suddenly, the dizzy spells I'd had last year came rushing back to mind. The sudden nausea, The night Andre insisted on driving me to the ER, the way he hovered over my medications. At the time, I thought it was care. Now, I wasn't so sure. Lord, protect me, I whispered, my voice breaking. Because this wasn't just about money anymore. This wasn't about mortgage payments or credit card bills. This was about motive. A reason for my son to pray for my last breath. I laid the policy flat on the table, staring at my own name like it belonged to someone else. I wanted to believe Andre didn't mean harm, that maybe he'd been talked into it by Vanessa, or tricked somehow. But deep down, in the quiet place, a mother never wants to admit, I knew better. He signed his name willingly. He planned this. For the first time, I realized I wasn't just a victim of financial abuse. I was prey in my own family. And the worst part was knowing that every smile, every hug, every I love you, Mama, might have been nothing more than camouflage for a plan that ended with me 6 feet under. As I flipped through the pile of documents again, something caught my eye. Initials scribbled in the margins of a loan application. Not mine. Not Andre's either. Just 2 letters. D. G. It didn't take a genius to know who that belonged to. Darius. Vanessa's younger brother. Darius had always been hanging around the edges of family gatherings, the kind of man who smiled too wide and talked too slick. He'd never held down steady work, but he always seemed to have cash in his pocket. I used to brush it off as harmless hustling, the kind some young men in Texas fall into when they can't find their footing. But now, staring at his initials on forged papers tied to my name, I knew better. I remembered the way he used to joke at barbecues, calling himself the problem solver. How he'd brag about knowing people who could make things disappear. Back then, I thought he was just puffing himself up to impress. Now I understood he'd been telling the truth. My stomach turned. Andre and Vanessa hadn't stumbled into this mess on their own. They had help. Darius was the architect behind the curtain, greasing the wheels, teaching them how to pull my name into their schemes without getting caught. And suddenly, things clicked into place. The second mortgage. The credit cards I never signed for. The tidy way my orchard was slipped into loan paperwork. Andre might have been desperate enough to lie, Vanessa greedy enough to push him, but Darius had the know-how to make it all look real. That realization chilled me, because this wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was organized, coordinated, a family conspiracy with me at the center like a trapped deer. I leaned back in my chair, clutching the papers, my mind racing. Andre wasn't strong enough to pull this off alone. Vanessa was manipulative, sure, but she didn't have the brains for financial trickery. No, it was Darius, working in the shadows, turning my son into his puppet, and me into his target. And for the first time, I wondered if blood alone tied Andre to me anymore. Because with Darius whispering in his ear, I wasn't sure my son belonged to me at all. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my recliner with the envelope spread out across my lap, the papers staring back at me like ghosts I couldn't shake. The numbers, the signatures, the policy, every line whispered the same thing. You're worth more dead than alive. I tried to push the thought away. Tried to remind myself this was my son, the boy I rocked to sleep when he was colicky, the teenager I cheered for at basketball games, the young man I hugged when he walked across that graduation stage. But the evidence sat there, cold and undeniable. Andre had signed his name to documents that carved up my future. He had let his wife believe I was dead. And with Darius egging him on, he'd created a world where my life was nothing but a line item on an insurance payout. I remembered last spring, when I suddenly got dizzy one afternoon. Andre was the first to rush me to the ER, hovering so close it was almost smothering. At the time, I thought it was love, devotion even. Now, sitting in the dark with those papers in my hand, I couldn't help but wonder, was he already calculating then? Already imagining dollar signs tied to my last breath? That thought broke something inside me. I've lived through storms, through loss, through burying the only man I ever loved. But nothing prepared me for the fear of my own child. It's one thing to worry about strangers, about thieves in the night. It's another to realize the danger might be sitting across from you at Christmas dinner, laughing at his wife's cruelty, while silently planning your exit. Tears slipped down my cheeks, hot and silent. I whispered a prayer. Lord, give me strength. Don't let me go down without a fight. Sevens, because I knew then what I hadn't wanted to admit all along. Andre wasn't just lying. He wasn't just taking. He was dangerous. And if I didn't find the courage to fight back, I might not live long enough to see another Christmas tree lit in my home. 2 days later, just as I was brewing my morning coffee, a knock rattled my front door. When I opened it, a tall man in a gray suit stood there, badge in hand. Mrs. Green? Detective Miguel Ramirez, Travis County Financial Crimes Unit. May I come in? Sevens. The words made my stomach tighten. I stepped aside, and he entered with the kind of calm authority that fills a room without raising a voice. He glanced at the stack of papers still spread across my dining table and nodded. Looks like you already know more than most victims when we meet them. Sevens. Victims? I asked, though the word sat heavy in my chest. Ramirez pulled out a leather notebook, flipping through a few pages before looking me square in the eye. You're not the only one, Mrs. Green. We've been tracking a string of financial fraud cases targeting elderly women across Texas. Widows, mostly. Always someone with savings, property, or assets that can be leveraged. Your son Andre, his wife Vanessa, and her brother Darius. We believe they've been involved in more than just your case. Sevens. The room tilted slightly, like the floor had shifted under my feet. I sank into the nearest chair, clutching the edge of the table. So, it's not just me? Sevens. He shook his head. Far from it. There's Mrs. Hayes down in Austin, lost over $200,000. Mrs. Thompson here in Houston. Her retirement account's gutted. We've identified at least 3 others, all with the same pattern. Your family is at the center of a much larger scheme. Sevens. I felt both sickened and strangely validated. On one hand, the betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. On the other, it meant I wasn't crazy. The forged papers, the insurance policy, the lies. They weren't just family squabbles. They were crimes. Detective Ramirez leaned forward, lowering his voice. We need your help. With your cooperation, we can build a case strong enough to stop them. But it won't be easy. They're desperate, and desperate people can be dangerous. Sevens. I swallowed hard, the echo of his words settling in my bones. Dangerous. He didn't have to tell me twice. I'd already seen it in Andre's eyes,
in Vanessa's sneer, in the shadows of Darius's grin. For the first time, I realized I wasn't just a mother trying to keep her family together.
I was a witness. And maybe, just maybe, I was the key to bringing my own son to justice. Detective Ramirez slid a folder across my table, thick with photographs and reports. I opened it slowly, my fingers trembling, and what I saw inside made my chest ache. There was a picture of Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, 81 years old, smiling proudly in front of the little house she'd lived in for 40 years. Next to it, copies of bank statements drained almost to nothing. $200,000 gone, siphoned off into accounts she never authorized. The next page showed Mrs. Lillian Thompson, 75, her gray hair pulled back in a bun, a church choir robe draped over her shoulders. She'd trusted Andre, too, signed over paperwork she thought was for investments, only to discover her retirement funds had been emptied. And there were more. Names I didn't know. Faces lined with age and trust. Women who reminded me of myself. Women who had believed their families, their advisors, the young people around them who said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of you."
Sevens. My throat tightened as I flipped through the pages. "Lord, have mercy," I whispered.
Detective Ramirez's voice was steady, but solemn. "This isn't just fraud, Mrs. Green. This is a pattern, a network. And your son? He's right in the middle of it. He's not just taking from you. He's been helping target others like you."
Sevens.
The words cut like glass. As much as I wanted to deny it, the evidence was right there in black and white. Andre wasn't some lost boy making bad choices under pressure. He was part of a machine, one that chewed up women like me and spat them out broken, and alone. I pressed the heel of my hand to my eyes, swallowing the sob that threatened to escape. It's one thing to be betrayed by your child. It's another to realize he's made a living out of betraying women who could be your sisters, your church friends, your neighbors. But amid the heartbreak, a strange kind of strength rose up in me, because I saw then that I wasn't standing alone in this fight. I had allies, other women who had been hurt, other voices that could stand beside mine. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the stirrings of something I thought I'd lost forever. Resolve. Detective Ramirez closed the folder gently, as if even the weight of his hand might crush the women inside. Then he looked straight at me. "Mrs. Green, we can't stop this without you." Sevens. Those words hung in the air, heavy as a church bell at midnight. I folded my arms, staring down at the papers scattered across my table. My son's name, my forged signature, the faces of women who had been robbed of their dignity. I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell Ramirez this wasn't my fight, that I was just a mother caught in the crossfire of her son's bad choices. But deep down, I knew better. This was my fight. And if I kept silent, more women would end up just like me. "What would you need me to do?" I asked finally, my voice steadier than I felt. Ramirez leaned in. "We need a direct link. A confession. Something that ties Andre, Vanessa, and Darius together. The cleanest way is to have you meet with one of them, wear a wire, and get them talking." Sevens. My heart skipped. "A wire? You mean pretend like I'm still on their side?"
Sevens. He nodded. "Vanessa would be the best target. She's ambitious. She talks too much, and she thinks she's smarter than everyone else. If you press her about money, about the orchard, about the mortgage, she'll show her hand. 7s. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the cross on the wall above my kitchen door. Never in my life did I think I'd be asked to spy on my own family.
But then again, never in my life did I think my family would put me in this position. I took a deep breath. If it'll protect those women, if it'll make sure nobody else suffers like this, I'll do it.
7s. Ramirez gave me a small, grim smile. You're stronger than you realize, Mrs. Green. This isn't just about your son anymore.
This is about stopping predators who think they can hide behind family ties.
7s. As he packed up his notes, I touched the edge of the folder one last time. Betrayal had brought me here. But maybe, just maybe, courage could carry me the rest of the way. The next afternoon, I walked into a cozy café on Westheimer, the kind with exposed brick walls and the smell of fresh ground beans thick in the air. My coat felt heavier than usual, not because of the chill outside, but because of the small recording device taped under the lining.
Every step I took reminded me of the weight of what I was about to do. Vanessa was already there, sitting at a corner table in a fitted blazer and pearl earrings, like she was headed to a business meeting instead of a conversation with her husband's mother. She stood and kissed me on the cheek, her smile all sugar. "Mama Loretta," she purred. "I'm so glad you came. We really need to clear the air, don't we?"
7s.
I nodded, settling into the chair across from her. "We do. Things got heated on Christmas. I want to understand where we stand."
7s.
Her eyes brightened at my choice of words. Where we stand. That was all the opening she needed. "Look," she began, lowering her voice as though sharing a secret. "Andre and I, we've been under pressure. Big bills, big responsibilities. But with your orchard income, with the right paperwork, all of this could be smoother. If you gave me power of attorney, for instance, I could manage everything. Make sure the mortgage gets paid, the cars, the school fees.
You wouldn't have to worry about a thing." 7s. I sipped my coffee, forcing my hands not to shake. "So, you'd be in charge of my finances?" 7s. She nodded eagerly. "It's what's best for everyone. Andre doesn't always tell me the truth. You know that now. But me?
You can trust me. I'd never let your orchard go to waste. I'd make sure that $10,000 a month worked for the family, not just sit in your account."
7s.
Her words spilled faster, greed sharpening every syllable.
She thought she had me cornered, that the old widow would be grateful for someone younger, savvier, to take care of her. I leaned in, lowering my voice just enough for the recorder to catch every word.
"Vanessa, dear, it sounds like you don't just want to help me. It sounds like you want to own me."
7s.
Her smile faltered for the briefest moment, then snapped back into place. But it was too late. The mask had slipped, and the truth was caught. I thought the police had put an end to it when Andre was hauled off in handcuffs. For the first time in months, I slept a full night, believing maybe justice would finally run its course. But peace never lasts long when the devil's got his claws in your family. 2 mornings later, the news came. Detective Ramirez called me, his tone clipped and urgent. "Mrs. Green, your son made bail."
7s.
My stomach dropped. How? He doesn't have that kind of money.
Sevens. That's just it, Ramirez said. He didn't. Someone else paid it. A man named Ray Castillo. Sevens. The name alone sent a chill down my spine.
Everyone in Texas had heard whispers about Castillo, the king of underground poker games, the man who ran loan sharking operations across Houston, the kind of man whose debts weren't collected with bills, but with blood. Andre owes him, Ramirez continued. We believe your son racked up close to $80,000 in gambling losses. Castillo bailed him out because he expects repayment, which means Andre's desperation is about to hit a whole new level.
Sevens. I sank into my kitchen chair, the phone pressed tight against my ear.
Andre, my baby boy, tied up with a man like Castillo. It was worse than any nightmare I could have imagined. Mrs. Green, Ramirez said firmly, I need you to understand something. Your son isn't just a fraudster anymore. He's a man in debt to organized crime. That makes him dangerous, not just to you, but to anyone standing in his way.
Sevens.
When I hung up, my hands shook so badly I could barely set the phone down. Images flashed in my mind.
Andre laughing at Christmas, Vanessa's greedy eyes, Darius with his slick smile, and behind them all, the shadow of Ray Castillo, pulling strings none of us could see. I realized then that my fight had grown bigger than family. This wasn't just about a mother standing up to her son.
This was about surviving the storm of crime and desperation that had swallowed him whole. And if I wasn't careful, it could swallow me too. That evening, just as I was washing dishes, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. At first, I thought it was another telemarketer, but the message froze me in place. Come alone. Parking garage behind the Hyatt on Main Street. If you call the cops, Vanessa dies.
Sevens.
Attached was a photo. Vanessa bound to a chair, duct tape across her mouth, her eyes wide with terror. My knees went weak. I gripped the counter just to stay upright. Whatever anger I had toward my daughter-in-law, she was still the mother of my grandchildren. I couldn't stand the thought of Kayla and Jordan losing her in some violent scheme. Before I could even think, another message came. Tell Detective Ramirez you lied. Say Andre never stole from you. Do it, or she's gone. Sevens. I called Ramirez immediately, my voice shaking as I read the texts aloud. He was calm, steady, the way detectives are trained to be.
Mrs. Green, don't panic. That photo isn't proof of anything. We've seen tactics like this before. They want you rattled. Sevens. But what if it's real? I whispered.
Then we'll confirm it.
Sit tight. Don't go anywhere. Sevens. But the fear clawed at me. The idea that my son, my Andre, could hold his own wife hostage just to silence me. It twisted my insides. Hours later, the truth came.
The photo had been lifted from an old college play Vanessa once acted in. A cheap trick, doctored up by Darius. There was no kidnapping, no hostage, just another scam, one more desperate attempt to keep me quiet. And yet, somehow, that revelation made it worse, because it showed me just how far Andre and Darius were willing to go, faking abductions, preying on fear, turning family into pawns. As I sat alone in my living room, phone clutched in my hand, I realized I wasn't just fighting liars anymore. I was fighting men who had lost every shred of conscience, who thought terrorizing me was fair game if it bought them another day of freedom. And that knowledge chilled me deeper than any threat ever could. The parking garage was nearly empty, just the echo of my footsteps bouncing off concrete walls. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting long shadows that made the whole place feel like a trap. I kept my coat tight around me, though the real chill wasn't from the night air. It was from the knowledge of who I was about to face. Andre stepped out from behind a pillar, his sweater rumpled, his eyes wild. In his hand was a gun, small but steady, pointed straight at me. "Mom," he said, voice rough, "you shouldn't have called the cops." "Sevens." My throat tightened, but I forced myself to stand tall. "Andre, you don't have to do this. You don't fix your mess by adding another sin to it." "Sevens." He laughed bitterly. "Fix my mess? You ruined me. If you had just kept quiet, none of this would have blown up. I had it under control." "Sevens." "Under control?" I asked, my voice calm though my knees shook. "Andre, you're standing in a parking garage with a gun pointed at your mother. That's not control. That's desperation." "Sevens." He shifted, the gun wavering just slightly. His eyes glistened with something between rage and despair. "They're coming for me, Mom. Castillo wants his money. Ramirez wants me in prison. If you don't take it back, if you don't tell them you lied, I'm done. And if I go down, you go down with me." "Sevens." I took a slow step forward, hands out where he could see them. "Son, listen to me. I survived burying your father. I survived raising you alone with nothing but diner tips and prayers. If you think I'm going to bow down to threats now, you've forgotten who I am." "Sevens." His jaw clenched. For a moment, I thought he might pull the trigger. But then I saw it. The flicker of that little boy I once knew, lost inside a man he no longer controlled. "You don't understand," he whispered. "I can't stop." "Sevens." I shook my head, my heart breaking even as I stood firm. "You can stop, Andre. But only if you put that gun down and face what you've done. Otherwise, you're already gone." "Sevens." The silence stretched. Then, with trembling hands, Andre lowered the weapon. It clattered to the concrete, echoing through the garage like the sound of a life collapsing. The clang of the gun hitting the concrete hadn't even finished echoing when a shout ripped through the garage. "Police. Hands where we can see them." "Sevens." Red and blue lights flashed against the gray walls as officers poured out from the shadows, weapons drawn. Detective Ramirez led the charge, his voice firm and unshakable. "Andre Green, step away from the weapon." "Sevens." Andre froze, his eyes darting from me to the officers. For a heartbeat, I thought he might run. But his shoulders slumped, and slowly, he raised his hands. 2 officers moved in, cuffing him with swift, practiced motions. From the far side of the garage, another figure tried to slip away. Darius. He hadn't expected the trap to close this tight. But before he could take 3 steps, a pair of officers tackled him to the ground, his curses echoing as they dragged him up in cuffs. I stood rooted in place, my hands still raised out of instinct. My son, my only son, was standing there in shackles, his head bowed. For a moment, my heart cracked open, remembering the boy who used to bring me wildflowers from the yard, the boy who once swore he'd take care of me when I got old. But then, I saw the insurance papers in my mind, the forged signatures, the photo of Vanessa tied to a chair, the gun he had just pointed at me. And I knew the truth. That boy was gone, buried under lies, greed, and desperation. Andre glanced at me as the officers led him past. His lips parted like he wanted to speak, maybe even plead, but no words came, and I didn't offer any comfort. Not this time. Detective Ramirez placed a steady hand on my shoulder. "You did the right thing, Mrs. Green. You saved yourself, and maybe a lot of others too." "Sevens?" I nodded, though my throat felt tight. Watching your child be taken away in chains isn't something a mother ever forgets. But neither is being forced to choose between protecting him and protecting yourself. For years, I had loved Andre enough to excuse anything. But standing there in that cold garage, I realized love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's surrender. And I was done surrendering. The courthouse in downtown Houston felt colder than any winter morning I'd known. High ceilings, polished wood benches, the faint smell of paper and old coffee lingering in the air. It was a place built for judgment, not comfort. I sat in the gallery, my hands clasped tight in my lap, as the bailiff called the case. State of Texas versus Andre Green, Vanessa Green, and Darius Johnson. My heart clenched hearing their names strung together like a roll call of ruin. Andre shuffled in first, dressed in an orange jumpsuit, chains at his wrists and ankles. He didn't look at me, but I caught the slump of his shoulders, the emptiness in his eyes. Vanessa followed, her hair pulled back tight, her face pale and hard. Darius came last, smirking like he still thought this was all a game, though his cuffs told another story. The judge read the charges: fraud, forgery, identity theft, conspiracy. Each word landed heavy, like nails being hammered into a coffin. When the sentences came down, the room was silent. Andre, 8 years in federal prison. Vanessa, 5 years for her part in the scheme. Darius, 10 years, with no chance of parole. I should have cried. Part of me wanted to. But instead, what I felt most was a hollow kind of relief. Justice had been spoken aloud, carved into the record of the state. For once, the lies didn't win. As they led Andre away, he turned his head just slightly, like he was searching for me in the crowd. I didn't meet his gaze. I couldn't. My love for him was still there, buried deep, but so was the truth. He had chosen this path, and I couldn't follow him down it. The gavel struck, echoing through the chamber, sealing the fate of my family. And in that echo, I heard both an ending and the faint, trembling sound of a beginning. When the trial ended and the courthouse emptied, the silence that followed was deafening. But not long after, life made sure I didn't stay alone. A week later, Kayla and Jordan stood on my porch, their small suitcases lined up beside them, their eyes wide with confusion and fear. Their other grandparents couldn't take them in, and the court decided they belonged with me. I knelt down, pulling both of them into my arms. Their little bodies trembled, not fully understanding what had happened to their parents, only knowing their world had cracked in two. As I held them, a truth I had fought for years finally broke through. I had loved Andre too much, or maybe in the wrong way. I had mistaken covering his mistakes for helping him. I had confused rescuing him with raising him. And in the end, I had raised a man who thought taking shortcuts was easier than standing tall. But I would not make that mistake again. Listen to me, I told Kayla and Jordan as we sat together at the kitchen table that night. I love you more than anything in this world. And because I love you, I will not lie to you. I will not cover for you. I will teach you what's right, and when you stumble, I'll help you stand, but I won't walk the path for you. That's yours to take. Sevens. They nodded, though their young faces still carried shadows. Still, I saw it. The spark of trust. The chance for something new. Raising them wouldn't erase what happened with Andre. Nothing ever could. But it gave me a second chance to love better, to guide wiser, to prove that family could be built on truth instead of lies. And this time, I wasn't going to waste it. Spring rolled into Texas with the kind of warmth that makes peach blossoms burst open overnight. Driving out to the orchard for the first time in months, I felt like I was stepping into a different life. The one James and I had dreamed of, long before lies and betrayal tried to bury it. Rows of peach trees stretched under the wide sky, their branches heavy with promise. I walked between them slowly, breathing in the sweet scent of blossoms, and for the first time in a long while, I felt rooted again. This land, this orchard, it wasn't just about money. It was about legacy. It was about something no lie, no forgery, no prison sentence could take away. I called the tenants who had been managing the harvests and told them we'd keep the arrangement, but with a new twist. A portion of the profits, 10%, to start, would go into a fund. Not for me, not for Andre's debts, not for anyone's pocket. A fund for widows, retirees, and elders who had been tricked out of their savings the way I almost was. With the help of my friend Clara Williams, we filed the paperwork. Within weeks, the Green Foundation was born, named not just for my family, but for the growth and resilience I prayed it would bring. It didn't erase the pain of what had happened. The orchard couldn't heal every scar, nor could it bring Andre back from the choices he'd made. But standing there in the Texas sun, watching bees dance from blossom to blossom, I felt hope sprout inside me again. The same land that once fed my family would now protect others. And that, to me, felt like a harvest worth every sacrifice. As the sun dipped low over the orchard, painting the Texas sky in strokes of orange and gold, I sat on my porch with Kayla and Jordan at my side. Their laughter drifted through the air, light and unburdened, a sound I thought I might never hear again. Looking at them, I understood something I had ignored for too long. Love without boundaries isn't love. It's weakness. I had mistaken sacrifice for strength, covering for Andre when I should have been teaching him accountability. In trying to protect him, I had only helped him fall further. The lesson was bitter, but it was also clear. Family isn't about blind loyalty or endless forgiveness. Family is about truth, respect, and the courage to say enough. Now, with my grandchildren, I have a chance to do better. To raise them not just with love, but with wisdom. To show them that real strength comes from honesty, from responsibility, from knowing that choices have consequences. When I think back, I wish I had drawn that line sooner. But maybe, by sharing my story, I can help someone else draw theirs before it's too late. And now, I want to ask you, if you were in my shoes, would you have the courage to stand up to your own family when love and justice collide? If this story touched you, if it reminded you of someone you know, or if it opened your eyes to the hidden battles many elders face, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your voice matters. And together, maybe we can build families not bound by silence and fear, but by truth and strength. Because at the end of the day, family isn't just who we're born to. It's who we choose to stand with, side by side, in the light of honesty,